We did.
Got so much junk in this email. Account now, it's ridiculous.
Okay, we are ready.
Keep getting, you know. We need your text. Your
Jim,
phone number.
we're gonna start.
Oh, go for it.
Yep, we're about to start.
Welcome to the March 9, 2026 meeting of the Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee. My name is Steve Perez and I'm the chair of the committee. Tonight, we are joined by Assistant District Manager Brendan Berth. This meeting is called to order at 6:32 p.m. As a reminder, New York state law requires all committee members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. Do we have any members of the public attending?
I do not.
One person, okay. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. Kate Kennedy is taking minutes tonight. Thank you, Kate. We will now take attendance by roll call. Brendan will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your names. Your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Honey Arias.
Present.
Jim Collins.
Here.
B. Disman.
Present.
Rob Barfin won't be with us tonight. Kate Kennedy.
Here.
Ava Marie Lassiter.
Present.
Rachel Patel.
Present.
Okay. Steve Perez.
Present.
And Mary Moreau also won't be with us tonight. So we have a quorum.
Okay. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and was reflected on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the January 12th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, please raise your hand. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the January 12th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CP6 website. I think everyone is familiar with the ground rules, so we'll jump right into the content of the meeting. First on the agenda is discussion of mayor's fiscal year 2027 preliminary budget. So all of you, I'm sure, are aware the budget was released on February 17th, which was just after what would have been our February meeting, which is why we didn't meet. And hopefully you had a chance to maybe take a look at it or at least read some articles about it. But I thought it would be a good idea just for us to very, very quickly look at a big picture of some of the presentation of the budget so we can all be on the same page. So Brendan, if you'll bring up some of the PowerPoint or PDF slides from the budget presentation.
Okay, just a moment. I'm about to share it on screen.
Perfect.
For those attending on Zoom. There we go.
Great. So these slides all came from Mamdani's presentation on the budget. I just wanted to make sure that everyone sort of gets an overview of where we are with the budget now. And remember, this is a preliminary budget. This is not the final budget or the approved budget, so it's going to go through a process. But anyway, this is what the overall budget looks like. It's $127 billion for the next fiscal year. The lion's share of the budget, as many of you probably know, is DOE, 40%. Next followed by social services. And then we have all the other agencies. I know that when I first saw the New York City budget, I was surprised. I didn't know that DOE took up that much, but it.
And didn't they increase social services? Because I think they did by a lot.
Yeah, there was, there's been some changes, but it's,
Yeah, it shot way up.
DOE is increasing even though the per capita number of students has decreased considerably since the pandemic.
So let's go to the next one. And this just shows the preliminary 5-year capital plan, $113 billion. Again, most of it's schools, housing, environmental production, transport, and then all the other things that are in there. Go to the next one. So this is the more interesting one, and that is the budget's a little bit different in that we're looking here at the new spending, and part of that new spending is reflected in unfunded mandates that came out. That's the dark purple of state mandates and other mandates. And some of the categories that don't get budgeted well in previous administrations where they made assumptions that they wouldn't spend money that they knew they were going to spend. And then that light purple, which he calls the Adams Big Six, are the six really, really underfunded categories that Mamdani just said, well, we know we spend the money. I'm not going to under budget it. We know we're going to spend it. So he just put it in there. And then new programmatic spending was a tiny sliver of that, 576 million, or 4% of, the total of the new spend. So that's just like an overall picture of some of the ways that the budget has changed. Go ahead, Sandy. Welcome.
Do we know the big six on?
Yes, I'm gonna go to that next. It's just the next slide. Yeah, this is like the big overview, and then here are the six. So part of the budget deficit was caused by this, and it's cash assistance, DSS, rental assistance, DSS, shelter costs, due process cases at the DOE, judgments and claims against the city, and then the city subsidy structural deficit from the MTA. So you can see how the budget in previous years has kind of not really, like the blue part is how much they budgeted and the yellow is like what we actually spend. So basically this just says, we're going to assume we're going to spend the money that we usually do, so we're not kind of under budget. Yes.
What is a due process case?
I was just gonna.
So I'm not on the education committee, so I had to look it up, but it has to do with some claims about special needs students. And the parents who are claiming that you're not meeting, I'm not an expert, like I said, or someone else can explain it better, but it has to do with if your child is not getting the resources they need, you can like file a case against the DOE.
And you can get it paid for by a private practitioner,
Right.
And then get
educator,
the
and
special
city will pay for it.
provided for
Yeah.
one of my neighbor's children.
But
Mhm.
the point here is just that overall, we're budgeting for things that we know we're gonna pay for, so that's kind of what created some of the gap. Then we go to the next one. And then the other additional, this is that dark purple part, which is like one of the big ones, new ones, is the state class size mandate, which many of you have heard about. So that's like an extra 600 million that we have to find, we have to reduce class size. So how do we do, what's going to cost more money to do that? So that's what that is. The biggest one is the health insurance stabilization fund, which is $911 million, almost $1 billion is for that. So, and that's the health insurance for city employees and pensioners. So, there's a lot of stuff in here that it's just, you've got to pay for it because it's required. Go to the next one. So one of the things that is new is they're introducing this idea of a chief savings officer, and the mayor is gonna put this position in every agency. And they've been asked to reduce the budget by a target of 2.5% at each agency as a starting point. So we don't know yet how they're gonna do that, but that's kind of the mandate they've been given.
Not Elon Musk.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
But the zero-based budget, a zero-based budget initiative would tend, when you bring them into government, they overall tend to reduce spending by anywhere from 6 to 10%. So I think when we go over your resolution, I had an amendment for that, to that effect. That we suggest that as well. 2.5% is basically holding spending at current spending. It's just a close for inflation. Inflation rate's 2.5%.
Okay, so next, do you have a question?
Yeah. Where did the 2.5% come from? Was this something that they think is doable, or?
They basically, he was asked that question at his press conference, and what he
Okay.
said was, it's what we can do without breaking, like, we don't want to
Right.
do what previous administration, which was basically like, okay, shut down the libraries for 3 days
Right.
a week, or, like, do really drastic cuts, and then suddenly you find out, oh, wait a minute, so it's kind of like, we don't know exactly where that figure comes from, but it was like, the mayor felt you could have agencies could easily find that amount
Yeah,
without disrupting essential services to the city.
Okay.
That's kind of the
that
answer.
makes sense.
The answer you get.
Adams had a thing where he it was called a program to eliminate the gap, where he set across the amount that was to be reduced. I think it was 7%, if I'm not mistaken. And that's kind of like taking a meat cleaver to a budget, and what you need when you cut a budget properly is a scalpel. I mean, I've never seen a budget couldn't be cut at least 5% with a scalpel.
Yeah. Oh, Rashma, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, Jim said some of it, all the other, not just Adams, but every mayor in New York City since I've lived in New York City always has done pegs when we've had a budget issue. So
Yeah.
he's just doing it different by not calling it a peg.
Yeah.
But it's essentially
And-
the same thing,
By
yeah.
establishing like a position, I'm
Yeah.
not sure, the peg was
target
generally
number.
like, but this is like a person whose job is to go through and do this, like on a permanent basis. So that's kind of like, I'm not sure where that model comes from, but.
And I assume that that person is within the budget, the cost of these people?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, these aren't volunteers. Yeah.
These aren't
they're
volunteers, okay,
It's somebody in the financial sector of the department.
okay.
Let's go to the next one. Just want to get through this quickly. So like these CSOs are supposed to help reduce spending. They're also looking to hire 50 new auditors at the Department of Finance that he's projecting will generate some income because you're going to find things. And then also looking at vacancies and removing hiring constraints. I'm not sure how that saves money, but in any event, it's mostly the auditors and the CSOs who are like getting some of the savings. Let's go to the next one.
So the auditors presumably would be raising revenue, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so this is what he says they've done to look at savings. So they're using some in-year reserves. They're looking for those savings plans, and they're expecting the higher expected revenues. And that then left a 7 billion gap. But let's go to the next. That's not where we ended up. So let's go to that. So then Hochul kicked in a $1.5 billion commitment from the state to the city, which is a new resources coming into the city. So that brought the gap down. Go to the next one. So this is what the state did. Some are multi-year commitments. I don't know exactly what all of these are, but it's, hospital sales tax, youth programming, public health cost shift from Article 6. And there's a one-time unrestricted aid of $500 million. So all of that sort of taken together with state assistance to the city. And what that did, go to the next one. And then an additional 97 million in school aid. That gave us a $5 billion gap. So took that 7 point whatever, and it's now 5.4. So go to the next one. So now this is kind of what the administration is looking at in the preliminary budget. Basically, it's saying that there's two ways. Next. So one, he has proposed because the New York City has to have a balanced budget, right? We cannot run a deficit. So this is what I want to say. He's saying increase personal income taxes on New Yorkers earning more than $1 million and more on the most profitable corporations. There will be a tax increase and fix the imbalance between what the city and the state taxation resources are like. Because the city, I'll go to that. That will be the next one, actually. There's another slide on that. Anyway, so that's path one. And that's kind of the administration's preferred path to go. Path two is, well, let's say Hochul and the state say, no, we're not going to raise any taxes on anyone. Then the only other lever that the city has to be able to change revenue is to increase property taxes. He's basically said, I don't want to do this, but it's like, I've got to balance the budget. That's kind of like the presentation he gave. But anyway, go to the next one because it goes into more detail. So when he says to recalibrate the relationship between the city and the state, what he's talking about is that there's going to be, New York City contributes way more in tax revenue than we get back. And so he really wants to renegotiate that arrangement basically with the state. And his point is that, GDP has grown up by 10% since 2010, and that's the city portion. Go to the next one. And then this is what I just said, that, he has to balance the budget. The higher taxes is what he wants to do to close the gap and then next one. So this is the path to would be a 9.5% property tax increase. And that would be,
That's the blended rate. 9.5, because it will be higher on commercial properties and co-ops.
Yeah,
Lesser
there
on
wasn't any
single-family.
details, so I don't know
Yeah.
if it's across the board or
It's
as we all know, the property tax system is extremely convoluted, so how they're gonna apply this
It's based on the rent.
to the assessed values and all that stuff. So anyway, let's go to the last one, I think. So the other thing is that they draw out some of the funding from the rainy day fund to make the balancing work this year, and then they replace it in future years based on the revenue projections. So I think that was the last one. Is there another one, Brendan? Is there another slide after that, or is that the end?
I think that's the end.
Okay, yeah, so that was in a nutshell, kind of like what the budget, his preliminary budget is at this point. So,
Lot to take in.
yeah, there was, based on this, now you can pull up the resolution. So based on some of what other organizations are saying about the preliminary budget and some of this information, I just put together a very short resolution with some brief statements about the overall statements about the budget. Every year Sandy submits a letter on behalf of, or the chair, submits a letter that is our CP6's kind of reaction to the budget. Most of that has to do with all of our budget requests, like that's the content. So we're asking all the committees to give us their responses to their budget requests so we can add that into the letter. But then there's like a upfront section where you can sort of comment overall. So I thought it would be a good idea to put together some language that would help Sandy write the letter, and if we can get to a consensus on what that is. Go ahead.
I agree with you on the resolution that we're opposed to the increase in property taxes, but we didn't mention anything about increasing the taxes on income for people making more than $1 million and
Yeah.
corporations. I've always lobbied for a consumption tax on luxury goods. There's a mansion tax on properties over $1 million in New York. That's a sort of a luxury tax. And, I just wonder if there could be something to the fact that, just like we don't pay taxes on anything $100, less than $100 when it comes to clothing, that maybe anything above a certain level of cost, maybe that tax should be increased. If it's, I don't know, Louis Vuitton bags or Rolls Royce or things of that nature. That's one way to do it. More.
I'm not sure like how effective is, there's so many ways, like that's just gonna make people buy that stuff out, not in New York City.
Not in New
right?
York
Like,
City,
I don't know,
but-
I mean, it's just, and how much revenue, I don't even know how much revenue that would even bring in, so it's kind of hard to say.
Well, then we
But,
should definitely tax people making over $1 million a year.
I don't think it's a binary choice. I don't think it's property tax or income tax.
yeah, I mean, again, I think the reason I didn't put that in there because we have to remember this is preliminary, so Mamdani's basically trying to like get the conversation started by
Trying to,
like he's
trying to
But
appease his base.
Yeah.
And want
Trying
tax on
to-
millionaires.
Right.
But it
he
looked
wants-
And by the way,
binary.
recent press reports show that that he's abandoned the million threshold, now he's talking like 300,000. That was one of the lower threshold numbers. But if I can speak, on your luxury tax, I've been bouncing this idea around for a while. Just what an excise tax is, all right. Excise taxes are imposed on things that are related to behavior, basically. So you get alcohol, tobacco, et cetera, gambling. There's no reason you need to have a Uber Eats or a let's say one Grubhub or all these other delivery services. I ran some rough numbers on this, not recently, but some time ago. If you were to impose a 2% or $2 excise tax on each of those meals
Mhm.
that are delivered by those delivery services and on Uber rides and Lyft rides. And, just those, and I didn't get to the other one. I think the number I was looking at was close to $3.5 billion.
Wow,
Yeah. Based on New York City deliveries. If you add in Amazon type deliveries and Target and Walmart and all the others that do deliveries and do it at $2 a package, I imagine that would be the rest of the balance.
yeah,
Um,
there's other sources.
and now that source is the source for the base number of how many deliveries are made in New York City was an AI platform. I don't actually know, but I'm sure the city knows because they have the sales receipts from the restaurant meals and they can back into it.
I
Go-
think, I
go
think
ahead,
that's a great idea, and also, you know, we get 61 million, well, maybe not anymore, tourists a year. Let's say that we've gone down to 55, just to give a number. Why not charge $5 for these people to come in? As sort of, it's discretionary spending,
You get into
How? How-
constitutional issues of that.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like, we can't tax, that'd be like us, New
Okay,
York City
Putting up a
coming
barrier.
up with a tariff.
Yeah.
So, might be a little complicated.
Like hotel-
Excise tax on meals over a certain.
Mail rooms, yeah.
Right, those are. already
B
taxed.
has her hand
Yeah.
raised, go ahead.
So I
B.
wanted to comment on that because what you don't want to do by the extra taxes is decrease your tourist industry, increase your hotel industries. And I was surprised not to see something more than the 2.5%. Because you always, when any new administration starts, they always start with, and I agree, at least 5%. Because when you start with 2.5%, you wind up with nothing. Also, the Board of Education budget is absurd.
Yep.
And we should really spend some time. I've always complained about the overhead, that the money doesn't actually go to the schools. And looking at that amount of what it makes up, you want to give education, but you really wanted where the classrooms and stuff. So I think that needs a whole special look. And then my third question, there was a lawsuit in the city that dealt with retirees and their health insurance and them going into HMOs because of what the commitment is for the city to pay the retirees' health insurance. Do you know where that is? Because that's a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah, I mean, the way I understand it, that's why we have that, the health, the almost $1 billion that's in there for mandatory spending, it's because of that. It's for the retirees' benefits so that they don't go to, basically, it makes up the difference between what they would get paid for an HMO, but they have a much better health plan, and that's what that money is covering. So if it's in the budget, my guess is they're not cutting back on the healthcare plans.
Yeah, so I mean, the mayor at some point said that he wasn't gonna move to the Medicare Advantage. Which, you know, was the plan under Adams' administration. There was a lawsuit and then Adams backtracked on it. And then it was something that wasn't addressed really during his campaign, but sometime after the election, he did say that he wasn't gonna push for it.
So maybe let's just take a look at the resolution and we can go one by one and decide what kinds of edits we want to make to each of these little paragraphs. So I just said we appreciate the increased transparency on expenditures with realistic estimates for the categories that have been chronically under budgeted in previous years. How do we feel about that statement?
It's fine with me.
Is it about this?
Yeah, well, yes.
Okay.
The thing with zero-based budgeting is when you analyze the expenditures, okay, it's basically, are you meeting the mission requirements of the agency? So with zero-based budgeting, if you're not meeting what's needed for social services and shelter housing costs, you apply that. Zero-based budgeting will suss that out and you will produce that additional amount of money for those services. By the same token, if you have a department that is spending too much, such as the Department of Education, that amount is reduced because they're overspending for the mission. That's why I suggest the zero-based budgeting as part of our resolution.
Okay, now let's go to the next one. This is the 2.5%, so we just said we are pleased to see the commitment to identifying opportunities for savings, designating chief savings officer each agency, with achieving the minimum of 2.5% budget savings by FY27. We also welcome efforts to rebalance the tax revenue sharing arrangement with the state to ensure a fair distribution of resources. B, go ahead. B, go ahead. You're on mute.
Yeah, I was commenting on that 2.5%. I think we should say something to the effect that, while the budget calls for 2.5%, we would recommend that we start at a higher base. Because,
Right.
and I would if you want to put a number in there, I would put at least 5%.
Okay, how do folks feel about 5%? Jim?
Yeah, I wouldn't suss out a specific number. Brendan, do you have that? I sent him some language that I wanted to add to this particular paragraph. I figured that 2.5% you were being diplomatic with the mayor's office. But can you bring up that other? It's basically this same paragraph, but with an added sentence.
Just a moment.
I may have it here, I can read. This is the discussion about zero-based budgeting.
This item,
Yeah, it's a PDF I sent you, I think. Yeah, there it is.
Can you make it a little bit?
Can you raise,
Oh,
it's the red text there.
zooming in a little bit.
Yeah,
Huh? Yeah,
just make it a little bit bigger and then move the
Yeah,
box so
move
we
the
can.
box.
Just move the box, please.
Cover up Rushmore and then be.
There we go. There we go.
Just move down.
And close that other box, whatever it is.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Okay, so it says. And we're basically saying 2.5% budget savings as an initial effort. However, we believe a better and more productive reduction would occur were the mayor to implement a comprehensive zero-based budgeting program across all city departments to be completed no later than the beginning of fiscal 2028. Such programs typically produce overall savings of 6% to 10% in government operations, sometimes much more. Jimmy Carter, when he was governor of Georgia, before he became president, produced tremendous savings in Georgia. He promised to do the same as president. Never followed up on it.
And why is it called zero-based budgeting?
That's just the term. It's what you do is,
It has to be
and it's
balanced.
lengthy, it's a lengthy process, but it's cathartic also. What you do is you ask the stakeholders of the recipients of the service, the information, whatever, why they need it. And if they can't tell you a reason they need it, or there's some reason for having it, for example, a law requires it, then you eliminate it. And you go step by step. A friend of mine did it for the Marine Corps. And it was very successful. He ended up working for the Federal Trade Commission. It's a very, very companies have been doing it for 40 odd years.
Okay,
more than 40 years, 50 years.
B, go ahead.
So I understand zero-based budgeting very well because I've been a participant of it for many years. I actually think it's a process that is normal for any large company or government agency, but I would not put in another bureaucratic process right now. I think the emphasis is that they need to look at what the budgets are and come up with savings. So that's why I want greater than 2.5, and I wouldn't introduce zero-based budgeting right now. It could
That's
be,
what zero-based
it
budgeting
could,
is.
it could be played. I've seen it played in many ways. It's been successful in other ways, but it also adds more bureaucracy to the budget process at the beginning.
Well, if I can follow up, as I said, this is toward the beginning of, he's saying by 2027, I'm saying commence this process because it is cathartic. And it does take time. You have to have agency heads, you know, go through and suss out all of the material. I'm saying, do that through the next year so that it's completed by 2028. And if he does it right, and you're right, there are people that do zero-based budgeting that screw it up. If you do ZBB properly, and if the mayor does it properly, man, the guy could end up being a real hero. Frankly, maybe even be presidential nominee.
So could we, I mean, perhaps we can choose a middle ground and go with what I think what people are asking to see is a higher amount of budget savings, right? And so that we can put that in the language to say that we recommend, however, like say that part is FY27 as an initial, however, we recommend that
Or we feel that,
target.
that the target, that it could be a higher level,
Right.
could be achievable,
is a higher level of savings is achievable.
is achievable. Yeah.
Like that.
B, how do
Why
you
don't we
feel
leave it-
about that?
Why don't we leave the language that says chief savings officer at each agency tasked with budget savings at the highest level possible.
So that we word again?
You want to change that one? Or
Well-
the one before?
Yeah, both of them.
This is saying what we are pleased about. That's, so
Yeah.
we need to.
And I'm not really
Yeah.
pleased with the
So-
2.5% savings, to be honest. with
Right,
you.
but that's what we're saying with, we are pleased to see. Well, what it says is we're pleased to see
I
the
know, but
commitment to
minimum.
identifying savings
A commitment or making an
And then-
effort.
by the chief of
Achieving.
each agency. And we can end it there. Put the period after it at each agency. We are pleased to see administration's commitment to identifying operations for savings and efficiency by designating chief savings at each agency,
Period.
period. However-
Agency.
Yeah, agency.
There you go. That's fine.
However, we feel that a higher level of savings than 2.5%.
Then 2.5%, yeah, a higher level of
Just say higher
savings
level of savings.
than 2.5.
But we wanna know,
Highest
we wanna
level.
know,
We want to know that, we want to note that we know that there's
yeah,
that
that's the
2.5.
target.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One
Francis.
other thing in terms of the structure of this resolution from the skim I've done. Like we start out with stuff that we're pleased by. Like after this, we
Yeah.
go into what we're disappointed by, so however we feel that a higher level of savings is achievable. That almost seems like a bridge between what we're pleased with and what we're disappointed with.
Yeah,
Say that again?
This part about, we feel that a higher level of savings is possible, could be a bit of a bridge between what we're pleased with and what we're disappointed with, because. Before then is what
Oh,
we're
higher
pleased
level.
with, after then is what we're disappointed with.
Well, but then we said we also welcome efforts to about rebalance the tax program. So it's a mixture, but yeah, it's sort of the way the letter flows. So that's kind of the language, but yeah.
I think it flows better this way than separating it out to positives and negatives.
yeah, it's better this way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Are we okay with this one? We can go to the next paragraph.
Yeah,
Okay, so we are disappointed about, so I brought up parks because most of our budget requests are
I
parks.
know.
It's like more than half
It's
of our
more than
capital
half.
requests are parks. And
Yeah.
it was a commitment that the administration made and sort of reneged on, so. I just wanted to say, okay, overall, like, we're disappointed by the level of funding for parks. It's less than 0.5% of it, and those of you who participated in the IBO.
I was in the idea.
They brought this up too.
Yeah,
As one of the issues about parks being so, and some of the organizations have come out and said this about the parks budget this year, saying disinvestment, can I just finish?
I'm sorry.
Decades of disinvestment in our parks, coupled with these disproportionate budget cuts and hiring freeze has left to deteriorating public park space. And we urge the administration to allocate at least 1% of the city's budget to parks, leveraging savings from other agencies. That's essentially what the statement says. Go ahead.
I saw a news report, I think he was committing an additional 50 million or 58 million to parks. To rehab a number of parks, I think, throughout the city, and it was relatively recently, like in the last week or so.
because of the pushback, cutting so much.
Not that I'm aware of, no, I think he just said, you know, and I know because one of the council members from Staten Island was quite upset that Staten Island wasn't getting any of the cash, so. And he made us think about it. Let me see if I can dig up the article.
You can find it, but I haven't, I mean, this is his preliminary budget and it does not include
Right,
that, so. Any thoughts on this one before we move to the next?
I'm okay
Parks is
with
okay.
it.
We may have to add one, but Miriam, who is not here, but she brought up the point about libraries have been cut by $30 million in this new budget. And she thought it would be good to say we would like to restore library funding to
So
baseline.
let's add another.
So we can say, can we also say we are also disappointed about the level of funding for the New York City libraries? About the level of funding for New York City libraries. Yeah.
The limited or
libraries.
the low or the lead?
Which we urge the administration
there it is.
to baseline funding.
You got good eyes.
Yeah.
Mamdani announces 50 million capital investment to reconstruct 10 parks in underserved neighborhoods.
But how do you know that's not already in this budget? That doesn't say.
Because
It's
he only
different.
announced it 4 days ago.
But it could be in there already. That's what we don't know, because he gave a very, very broad overview of his budget. He didn't go to any details at his press conference. So now he may be revealing the details.
Yeah,
in the-
we
in the
can't,
line
we
items.
can't
I
depend
don't
on
know.
that, we have to go with what we have.
We urge them to based on funding for our libraries. Okay.
I'm gonna also add a statistic. I'm reading the Gothamist that, or in Gothamist that, less than 0.4%.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Miriam said that. She said sorry, she gave me the language. She recommended 0.5% be allocated to libraries. And I
So
think
let's put that in there.
Yes.
asked to dedicate 0.5% of the city's budget to the library system.
So we put it on the second sentence, we urge the administration
To allocate
to allocate.
0.5% of the budget to city libraries. Go ahead, Sandy.
Sorry, is that what it is in the last year's budget? Or, I mean, we're asking for more than.
Yeah.
So just to get it back.
I think it's really close, like it's less than 0.3% now, and that's the $30 million cut, so it's,
So it's what Adams had.
yeah, it's
What Adams.
it's kind of the same, yeah.
The preliminary budget.
Yeah, okay,
Perfect, thank you, Brenda.
great. Go to the next one. Okay, this is the property tax. We're just saying we urge them to identify other ways to close the budget gap.
Yeah.
New York City's property tax system is convoluted and regressive. A property tax increase without reforming the current system, combined with current housing affordability prices, would only further undermine the ability of working families to be able to afford to live in the city.
again,
I'm trying to keep these things general, mind you, we haven't looked in detail in property tax, we did
I
2
did-
years ago on
I
this
know we
committee,
had.
but yeah. But we didn't come up with any proposals yet.
How
so,
they do,
yeah.
they're basing it on the level of rents, which makes absolutely no
Well,
sense.
that's only condos and co-ops, but like.
Yeah,
The
but the rest is.
rental buildings, they all have different formulas,
They're all different.
small townhomes, yeah.
I again bring up the fact that we haven't commented because he offered two options. Increases in taxes for 1 million and above. We're not gonna comment at all on that.
I think that's gonna be probably controversial, I'm not sure, I left it out because. I wanted to make that this is a letter that Sandy's gonna send to the mayor, so. You know, we haven't had deep discussions on income tax. So for us to be able to make a statement as a board, I think, so I was just trying to come up with. What are some things that probably 99% of, folks would agree with? Rather than putting things that,
Any thoughts, Sandy?
how do you feel about that, Sandy?
Well, I know we're supposed to vote on this at Borough Board. And that it will probably come up as part of the discussion, so it would be helpful to know what the board thinks about it.
Hmm.
I think so.
When is Borough?
It's the week after full board, right?
And we gotta pass this Wednesday.
Yeah, but
How do others feel about adding our sentiments on
On the income?
the income tax?
on the income
proposal?
tax, I think it merits putting it in there because it's just sort of. I think the absence is a little glaring, that we didn't comment on, because he has two options.
No,
So, no,
it's not, no, it's not a binary choice.
Are we sure?
There are other, well, right now, there are those two revenue options. He could ask the state bill for authority to impose the kind of excise tax I already described about, the excise
but
tax.
that's not what he's talking about, that's
I
not
know
what
he's
he's
not.
saying.
So
Maybe it's never been suggested to him.
let's see what's,
Well,
let's see what Russ.
that's what I'm saying that, perhaps the way to comment on the income tax is to offer.
You want him to increase the income tax?
I'm completely indifferent to it, but what I'm saying is if we can offer. Options other than,
Well, yeah,
that's what I'm talking about, that we can't just ignore it because that's a possibility,
right?
right?
So Rashma, let's go to Rashma first.
The whole time I've been on this committee, the letter has always been about our budget request and what hasn't been funded or what we have as our priorities. We've never touched on the revenue side and how they should raise the revenues to fund
Yeah.
the project. So I would advocate for not mentioning either one of these as a result of that. And, and I also think, especially if we're gonna get to the income tax thing, it's gonna take too long a discussion, even at full board, to get people to agree on this. But
Yeah.
So we need to
comment-
eliminate this one then.
yeah, but our comment has always been on, these are our needs, we want this funded. They have to figure out how they get the money to fund it.
Yeah. Okay, B, go ahead. What do you think?
So I support keeping this property tax in, given the discussions that it has already had in the city and the stakeholders, and especially given our area where we have a lot of condominiums and cooperatives that because of their class would wind up paying more. But I don't think we should get involved with the taxing of millionaires or billionaires because we haven't had those discussions. That's going to be very discordant. At our full meeting, it may even be among ourselves. We can say that we recommend that they look at alternative methods of raising revenue as a generic type of stuff and not just offer two solutions.
Right,
Yeah,
Exactly, thanks, Lee.
right, there's other revenues.
Yeah, so we
that-
could add it to this.
but that's what's there, guys. So we said we urge the administration to identify other ways to close the budget gap besides. And I want to leave it general and not say that we have all these recommendations about things that we don't know much about, so.
But you should really say other revenues.
So what about other ways to
Other-
close the
other
budget?
ways to
Well,
close the
because you can
budget
find
gap
great,
by
you can
increasing
do things by revenue or you can cut
Or-
costs.
Yeah.
There's two ways to close the budget, right?
Yeah, but he's already talking about cutting costs with the 2.5. So that's his one solution of cutting costs.
So we're saying it needs to be
Right,
more.
but he still has a gap after.
He still has a gap anyway, yeah.
One
Uh,
of the revenues things somebody has put out, I don't know who, is to increase the revenue from parking, so free street parking would be
I heard that.
dismissed. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like, if those issues are out there, I think as a community board, we should feel, the same kind of ability to make our own proposals as to revenue. I can't tell you how many times I've been at borough president meetings or borough president inaugurations, these ceremonies that they have, where they will mention something that was adopted as policy because it came out of one of the community boards. And I think this is the excise taxes that I discussed earlier, I think is one of the options that we should put forward.
we would have to have a discussion about it. We
Okay.
haven't examined we haven't examined what the impacts are, and I mean, we can do that, certainly, but
Right.
we can't do it right now.
And they can
Yeah.
put it in the whatchamacallit.
Yeah.
They can figure out the methodology.
Yeah, correct.
But as I say, man, I live in a building with 32 people or 32 stories, right? There are so many deliveries coming into that building every day.
Oh, it's insane.
Yeah, and it's only since the pandemic. It's not as if this was something that was happening before. So it's a good revenue.
So, yeah, I mean, returning to whether or not we keep the property tax paragraph in or not. I guess
I
the
think we
reason
should.
why I left it in there is because it's a very distinct proposal in the budget, in the preliminary budget, that we should probably take a stand on. And both Mamdani says he doesn't like it and doesn't want to do it. And then you have a lot of folks on the other side of this political spectrum, I'm sure, who also do not want to do it. So
Nope,
this is one of those things where I don't think anybody thinks it's a good idea, so it's
That's
easy,
not a good
it's sort of easy for us to take a stand as a board and say, we also agree this isn't a good idea. So let's think of other ways. But we're not at a point yet to say we know what the other ways are, because we haven't had an in-depth discussion about it. So I would say let's keep it.
okay. You wanna show of hands or?
Yeah, that paragraph is fine.
Let's go to the next one and then we'll come back. I'd say it's the last one. So the last one just says in general that there is uncertainty about the federal environment, funds coming to the city, and we recommend that the city should project for shortfalls and take appropriate actions for uncertainty, basically.
Mhm.
So it's pretty general, the statement. But it just recognizes that we know that they need to be thinking about all of these other funding flows that come in from federal. And the economy.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I wouldn't bank on.
Go ahead, B.
Yeah, so I had some problems with this because it actually gets a little more involved in politics, especially since you're saying the new federal administration. We know there's gonna be major problems with the federal budget. There's gonna be sequestering, there's gonna be not giving us major stuff. So I think the proposal the resolution stands pretty firm. I would not comment on the federal government at all. This is just doing what New York City and the state needs to do.
Okay, anybody else? Comment on this?
I would agree with B on that. I was
Yeah,
gonna- if we
We
keep,
can take that.
I won't say new federal administration because it's not new anymore. And then by saying just federal administration, we take out the fact that to B's point about getting into partisanship here. And then there cuts happened last spring with Doge and stuff, but we've already seen Section 8 housing voucher issues, the Medicaid cutbacks and stuff. And so that's already hitting us.
So we could take that
Are you
one
saying-
sentence out, right? Reshma, we're talking about the federal administration has called for major funding changes,
Yeah.
just take it out. And leave the rest?
So let me see how that reads now.
Need to project.
Well, I think B is saying just remove the entire paragraph.
Yeah.
Excuse me,
Yeah,
I
Which-
don't think, I don't. think
It
the
doesn't have
entire-
anything to do with the budget itself that we're commenting on. So I think at some point, as we look at other issues and what the federal government does, or even the state does, we should deal with it separately. I just don't, this is support for the budget or as it is now, or support for things to be considered in general terms. I just,
Okay,
not necessary.
I'm fine with that if people, unless someone really wants to comment on that. We can take it out.
I just wanted to say that, I think the issue regarding the federal government at this point isn't just political, because even in the news, now there's a suit in terms of the $60 million that we were supposed to be reimbursed by the federal government. That was just this morning and last night, that it's not something that's speculative. That's happening now, and it's not political if that's being done with a suit. So I think that we really have to address that element in terms of what we're then eventually going to have to come up with. If it's still, if the suit, we do not win the suit and we are not reimbursed. So I think certain issues have to be, to me, a lot of this is very general anyway, in all of the paragraphs. But that we recognize that. So I think that something regarding what you already put in there should remain regarding, to me, funds being held that we are supposed to be allocated or reimbursed that the federal government has not complied with yet.
B, how do you feel about this paragraph now that we've taken out all of that other language? We can simplify it more. Or would you rather it just be removed?
I couldn't unmute myself. I would rather see it unmute, but if we want to say something about, we also have concerns about the high degree of uncertainty about the future direction of the national and local economy and its impact on the city budget, and feel that the city should take into account this for future deliberations on the budget. Something very
Yeah.
general.
Yeah, right. So then, Brendan, just take out the while it remains unclear how and when these actions, so take out that piece of it. It would be prudent to assume that the city will need to project for shortfalls and take appropriate actions.
Yeah,
We're advising them to, I mean, they know this, but if we're just.
No,
putting us-
See, I don't consider that political, because that's reality.
Yeah,
yeah,
but I'm just saying, they know this. I just want for us as a board to be on the record as saying they need to be thinking about this, so.
I agree with that 100%.
I think this creates a little bit more compromised language here.
And that
Okay,
we're watching.
yeah,
any other comments on the resolution?
yes.
Go ahead.
Brendan, can you bring up that other document? This would be under paragraph 34, I think it is on my phone. And this is to suggest other revenue sources. I was just looking here, 2.7 million deliveries by Uber Eats alone per week in New York City. That's just Uber Eats.
Yeah, I mean, again, we can take these issues up at a different line, but
Why not
we
put them in the
can,
resolution?
because I don't know what the impact is on this. How is it gonna,
We don't.
we've
We're
done,
just-
we haven't had a discussion about it.
Well, read the paragraph. Among the revenue measures, we encourage the mayor and his budget staff to explore. We're not saying adopt them, we're just saying explore them.
I mean, we could come up with lots of different ways that they could explore, and we're not in a position because we haven't met with these companies. We haven't, I don't know what the impact is on the New York City economy. I don't know what kind of.
It's an
revenue
excise
is there.
tax, it's not a tax on the economy, it's a tax on behavior.
So. We're not.
I think you should put it to the committee.
Okay, anyone on the committee would like to second putting in the language on excise tax?
I just wanted,
And
to me, I love the way the resolution is constructed, but it's all very general. If there's any way that this could be made into a general statement, and also where you're not mentioning specific companies and specific rates, but knowing that this is something that could be discussed in terms of revenue raising, I would be in favor of it, but not in the specifics that are here. It's not even fitting with the rest of the resolution, now that we're getting into the naming of not only rates, but also specific companies. If it could be a little bit more general, but at least expanding on what is revenue raising measures. If it could be a little bit more general, and it would still fit in with the texture of the rest of the resolution.
I
If
see
there's a
what
way
you're
to do it that
How
way.
how about we encourage, or is it? We encourage the mayor and his revenue team. We encourage the mayor and his administration to consider alternative revenue raising measures that have not yet been reflected in his budget.
It's pretty general.
Dee, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, that's what you just asked for.
Yeah, I was gonna comment before we just had the generalized statement. I don't think there's a problem with the generalized statement that was just given. Because you have comments about the libraries, you have comments about property taxes. And you could say something, we encourage the mayor and the state to look at other revenue raising means. That would also be generic without mentioning anything.
Okay,
Would you
Okay,
say
we can
something
go back to that.
such as excise taxes, or you would just leave it
No.
without?
I would leave it without that because there could be many other stuff. And I think we need a discussion on whether it's excise taxes, what it does to the economy and everything. But I think to say there are other methods of raising revenue and they should really explore them.
Mhm.
Yeah,
so the language again is,
We encourage, you want to type,
yes,
we encourage, the mayor and his administration to explore additional revenue measures that have not been included in his preliminary budget and that may not have been considered heretofore.
may not have been considered.
previously,
Previously.
and then paragraph mark that because it's not about, it doesn't belong in the property tax.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Could it? Excuse me,
Go
could
ahead.
it say, revenue generating measures to make it a little bit more
Yeah, explore
specific?
just
Revenue generating.
revenue generating measures, correct. Yeah. Okay, let's just go to the next, bring it down a little bit, so I can see how it flows into the next sentence. Just slightly go a little bit for the. we also have to say. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Brendan.
Oh, never mind.
Okay. Are we okay with this language?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any other comments or other language they would like to edit? If not, let's go ahead and do a vote on the resolution, Brendan.
Okay. So when I call your name, please say whether you are in favor, opposed, abstain, or not entitled to the resolution. Tanya Arias.
In favor.
Jim Collins.
I favor.
Edisman. Edisman.
In favor,
Kate Kennedy.
In favor.
Ava Marie Lassiter.
In favor.
Rishma Patel.
In favor.
Steve Perez.
In favor.
With all 7 committee members in favor, this resolution passes and will be before the full board on Wednesday.
Thank you. So we can move to the next item, which is to discuss. Oh,
Steve, I
sorry.
wanted to mention, because there was so much discussion on revenue generation, there is a event by the Center for Urban Futures coming up next week on new ideas on generating revenue. So I am forwarding that email to Brendan to share with everybody. And there's a report with 5 revenue raising suggestions in there. There's a link for that. So
Thanks, Rashmi.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you so much.
I was trying to link it, but it's not linking in the chat. So I'll forward it to you, Brendan, and you can share with everybody.
I can share it with the committee tomorrow.
Thank you.
So we can move on to discussion of our budget requests as a committee, and we have 2 in the budget. So once you have a chance, Brendan, bring up the air table so we can take a look at the ones that belong to our committee. Our capital request was for office space, and I know that's something that Jesus has been championing. And I think the response from DCAS was that they needed to get some kind of a form. But I know Jesus has done this, so I'm really not sure what it is that we need to do at this point, other than to follow up differently. But
I think because he's already filled out one form, their assumption is he wants different office space. So, and they were not happy with the office space we've been offering. So I think that's part of, they can't have 2 competing forms, I guess.
okay. So we need to update our request, is that, or we're not sure?
I mean, the request we put in was for space in the Spark facilities, but that's not until 2032.
Right, but our updated request, though, we just asked DCAS for help with this, our current space.
Yeah, which I think is a little bit. I think that's a separate request.
No, that's our request. It's our budget request this year.
So what they're saying is for this work, we need to go out for.
Yes. So I'm not sure, I'm assuming Jesus knew that and filled one out, but maybe Brendan, you should check with him.
Yeah, I'll check with Jesus.
I mean, I know there's been a lot of discussion about this, so I will leave it to Jesus to tell us if we need to do more follow-up on this, but
Yeah. And he was the one who really pushed to get this current space, so.
yeah,
He knows way more than I do.
right,
That's for sure.
okay. And then the other request was an expense request. And what did it say now? What was the response? Oh, right, so
But it's being maintained.
yeah, as of FY 27 preliminary budget, each community's board's budget is being maintained. So I don't know. Essentially, you all know the history here. Over time, community board budgets end up becoming very different because it depends on the tenure of staff. You know, staff that have been working for 20 years at the community board earn higher salaries than brand new staff. So budgets kind of tend to get out of whack over time, and they've never been recalibrated, shall we say. So it ends up with a sort of idiosyncratic inequivalence across different boards. And so I think we've just raised that issue many times, and the answer we always get is, well, the budget is what it is. So that's, I don't know if we want to say anything in response to that, or keep it on there, or do anything different.
Cutting our budget will be okay.
Yeah. Anyone have any comments on that? Okay. Those were our 2 requests. The only other thing, Brendan, that I noticed, you and I discussed it a little bit, but there was some strange presentation, the way that the register came back with some of our requests, and I just don't know if you have any insight into why some of our budget requests. Well, one, the register came back and we have titles for our budget requests, and they stripped all the titles out and gave generic ones. And then some of them, it was difficult to tell what we were asking for. And Brendan, you updated the Airtable, so I don't know if you, and then some of them, there was a request in there that isn't in our Airtable at all. And it was sent to DOT, as a number 2, as a priority request, and so I don't know how that happened, but
Yeah,
anyway,
that was the only request
Yeah.
where I noticed that happened. I don't know what happened there. The other ones I was able to sort of match appropriately.
okay, so there's no missing requests
No,
from there, okay, so they were all in there.
they're all,
There was an extra one.
I don't,
and then-
which I don't know how that ended up
And then-
in there.
How do we submit continuous support requests? Because some of them were in there as continuous support and then they were confused because they got priority numbers.
So I'm not 100% sure on that since it was Jesus who submitted the request and the way, like the whole process of submitting the requests changed a little bit this past
Mhm.
year, so I don't really feel qualified to
Okay,
really speak on that.
what? Sandy, go ahead.
And sorry, just as the, each community board's budget is $257,507. Is that not correct?
Well, that's from fiscal year
That's
20.
that was from 4 years ago.
But they're saying that every board got the same budget.
Right.
Is that not true?
It's not, but Brendan, go ahead.
I think it might have been Jesus actually who discovered that that's not entirely true, that every board gets the same amount, at least not in Manhattan. I can't speak for the other boroughs.
Okay, Rashma, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it, but Jesus sent an email about 2 discrepancies in the register versus what we have in our Airtable that has it's fairly long, so. it may
Okay.
just- yeah.
We'll look into it then at that point. Thank you for plugging that. V, go ahead.
Just gonna say, working with the budgets over the years, they're not uniform, at least not in Manhattan. That depends on the age of the senior staff, the amount of staff you have. That's why years ago we started the street fair money when we were being cut. I think we're one of the few boards, there might be one other, Sandy, that has street fair money. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think, there's no uniformity. Sandy and I just did a meeting on personnel actions, and there's just no uniformity among any of the community boards.
Okay,
The populations are all vastly different too.
Mm-hmm.
We have like 250,000 and some I think have as few as 60,000.
Yeah.
Something like that.
okay.
So we have to do more with less.
Any other comments on our budget requests before we move on?
No.
Okay. Last topic for the evening is our Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee handbook. So all committees have been asked to come up with a handbook for their committee that helps people when they onboard, to just help them know what the committee is supposed to do, what it needs to be aware of, resources. So we came up with our budget, not exactly a handbook, but a starting point for us is that we have the guidance on our district needs statement and budget request process, which Brendan is now showing on the screen.
Or I'm in the process of
About to show on the screen.
Gonna make it a little bit larger for those online.
So those of you who may remember, we updated this slightly earlier this year, calendar year, I think, sorry, last year. We updated the document, but it gives an overview of the budget cycle. What are the different dates and deadlines that match the city? What are the deadlines internally that we have to be aware of? And then it gives some, if you can just maybe zoom out a bit, Brendan, and then move down so we can see
Zoom out.
the rest of the document. Yeah. And then just scroll down. So,
Move this as well.
yeah, I don't want to go into all of the details. I just want to show people what's here so that we can see if there's things that we should add. So just scroll down, Brendan. So that's the budget cycle, the calendars, the due dates. Go down. We have guidance on selecting budget requests. Just ask questions about people, or how are people aware of this? Has the committee discussed the request? Has there been liaising with the office? Then we have an update of, I updated this today. How many capital requests, how many expense requests we have on the Airtable now versus what the limit is. Go, if you can keep scrolling, Brendan. And then we have guidance for drafting the budget requests. The description. Keep going. Then we have guidance on rankings. Which is not so important now that we have many fewer requests, can kind of scroll past this. Go down, and then we have, keep going.
The other thing I'll say on rankings is the whole ranking system has changed so that it's only. It's not ranking all of the requests together, it's ranking the ones from each agency, so.
Yeah,
like,
each,
Number one for
yeah.
Department of Transportation, number one for Department of Parks.
right, so each agency gets its own, yeah.
Exactly.
And then we have the form, which all committees should now be aware of. Many people forget about this. We have a form for submitting the budget requests. It's hyperlinked on this document, but the format is exactly the way that fields are on the Airtable. So we need to capture that, and we get to know, who was submitting the request, when it was submitted, so that we kind of have all of that information. And then we have guidance for drafting district need statements. You can scroll below that, Brendan. It's fairly general, and then submitting the district needs statement. Keep scrolling down. So this is new, where we have a district needs statement resolution template, which the office, I believe, but I don't know where that lives, Brendan, so we need to link it here.
I'm sorry, Steve, did you send this through email or this?
No, I mean,
Oh, because,
we've seen it before.
I
I
thought
mean,
I-
it's just our normal,
okay.
yeah. I had sent this the last time we reviewed it.
I mean,
But yeah. Go
If
ahead,
the
Brendan.
committee would like, I can reshare it.
Please.
Yeah.
The same email where I'll share the thing.
Yeah, we'll send it out again.
Please, thank
And then
you.
we have online resources. Which point to lots of different places where you can find information. And the new one that I added was the New York City Capital Projects Dashboard. Which provides a view on all of the construction projects of critical infrastructure. It's a little difficult to use, but the IBO presented it at
Right.
so I added it to this. And it has some of the parks has actually a really good one on capital projects with status of all of the parks projects. Not all agencies have those for their capital, so it's a little bit disjointed, but this is what is available. And so the question now is, are there other things that you feel like we should put on this guide for new committee members to know about our committee or the budget or anything else? If people have suggestions, if you don't have a suggestion now, you can think about it. And when Brendan sends this document around, take a look, see if there's anything that you feel like you as a committee member, particularly a new one, would want to know when you're coming in on board this committee. Go ahead, Sandy.
I might say it's very focused on budget requests and not on
Oh,
government affairs.
oh, you read my mind. She beat me to
I
it.
mean, the government affairs portion of what you do is also.
It's really important. Yeah, I was just gonna bring that
Yeah.
up. That we haven't covered I mean, we even comment on legislation, and I mean,
Yeah.
government affairs is really important.
Yeah, it's a little challenging because we tend to deal with topics that don't fit neatly into other committees and are very topical. So like something that happened in the city. So it's not something that there's not like a tracker where we come up with our topics, right? We talked about redistricting because it was super relevant. We talked about property taxes that one time. We talked about,
But maybe just
Yeah.
have to add that.
I think,
Yeah.
we
we can add that, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for, because this guide was for budget requests, but now we want to turn this into a handbook. So it can be a little bit more general about other things that we do as a committee. And so that's where I'd like committee members to help me come up with, what are the things that you might want to see on here. So,
Maybe when it's completed, we should put it up as a resource, each of the booklets up as a resource for all of the community board members. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I think that's.
I think that's it. And actually, there's a template that I think is being worked on at the exec level, that it's in the process of being rolled out, so
Processes.
Yeah.
I don't know what is in that template yet, but we can work, I just wanted to get a head start, on getting ideas from the board, from the committee on ways to improve.
Do you wanna start work on the governmental affairs section here now? Or you wanna
I would,
just put something
yeah,
together and then bring it
yeah,
back?
not now, but like each person take a look at it and then decide what you think could go on there, and we can come back to it at our
Okay.
another future committee meeting.
Yeah, I kept looking for the governmental
Yeah.
part and I couldn't find it. Okay,
Okay, so that's your homework for next committee meeting.
you don't.
Any other old or new business? I will waive my chair's report. Okay, so I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Yeah.
adjourn.
Thank you all for your time. And see you at full board on Wednesday.
All right, good night, everyone.
Everybody adjourning.